This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz, and I'm very excited to be speaking with Tobias Menzies about Manhunt. How are you, Tobias?
I'm good. Nice to see you.
You too, you too. We spoke a couple years ago about The Crown. It's great to be back again. A lot has changed for you, I think, and I want to just talk about everything starting with this exciting Apple TV Plus series.
Yes, me too.
So, what did you know of Edwin Stanton before taking on this role?
Absolutely nothing. No, I'd not heard of him. Um, uh, yes, and obviously a very important part of the Civil War history of America. So it was a big part of this job was digging into this man's life and who he was, and it was I love that part of acting. It takes you into stories that you haven't heard of before, into areas of history and which are new, and so that's was can be really exciting, and this was certainly a case in point.
I assume that Lincoln enjoys a similarly positive reputation, in Europe as he does here in the US.
Yes, I think yeah, as sort of political reputations go, I think it's hard to beat Lincoln's, isn't it?
That's true. And what about John Wilkes Booth? Is that a name that you were familiar with?
Yes, I think I probably knew the name John Wilkes Booth, that Lincoln had been killed in a theater. That's probably all I knew, I think.
So where did you start with the research process and what surprised you most in digging into all of it?
So much surprising detail. I read around it a bit, watched some stuff, watched Ken Burns's documentary series of the Civil War. So obviously that those 4 years leading up to the assassination are a huge ingredient in the story that we tell. I read Team of Rivals, which is a nonfiction book about the Lincoln cabinet during the Civil War, which Stanton was a part of. Just trying to get a sense, I guess, of the sort of political landscape of the time. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I was interested in doing the story is it's just a very surprising story, from where Lincoln was killed, how he was killed, in front of hundreds of people, a packed theater. Um, John Wilkes Booth sort of jumps onto the stage, um, sort of declaims his deed, runs into the night, disappears for 12 days. Um, and the fact that this event happened within days of the end of the Civil War threw the result of that war into question. And then, yeah, all the sort of much longer political fallout. It took 100 years to deliver the voting and land rights that Lincoln and Stanton were in the process of delivering to freed slaves. And yeah, so there's both just an incredible, true crime story, but also um, such an interesting and pivotal moment in the story of the United States.
One of the most interesting things I think about the show, I knew going in that Johnson is one of the least well-regarded presidents in American history. And just, when we see Edwin talk to him and call him Andy and sort of tell him not to get ahead of himself, and just so interesting to see that dynamic because he has such reverence for Lincoln and then just no patience whatsoever for this new guy.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
what
Some presidents are better than others.
what was it like just building that relationship and working on those scenes?
Really great. Yeah. I think yeah, all the different kind of political complexities are a huge ingredient of the show, that the killing of Lincoln puts Stanton, who is our lead, into a world where all the certainties are ripped away, and he's trying to work out who knows what, who can be trusted, who can't be trusted. And obviously, at the heart of that is this new president, who was on the kill list that night, but it didn't happen. Um, and so, yeah, a big part of the show is Stanton trying to strategize and think his way through huge kind of personal and political complexity.
And then the relationship with Lincoln obviously is again one of just warmth and really mutual respect, which is nice to see. How did you approach those? I mean, those scenes are mostly come as flashback, throughout the season. But how did you approach those scenes in your relationship with Hamish?
Yes, obviously it's all told in flashback because the story starts with Lincoln's death. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess we felt that. I think it was both true. When Stanton and Lincoln first met, Stanton actually didn't think much of Lincoln, um, and he thought he was a sort of a country lawyer from Springfield. And at that point in their careers, Stanton was the much more successful um, lawyer. Um, but obviously, when the story that we tell, we come in at a point when that relationship has changed completely, and they've been working together in the cabinet during the Civil War, and Stanton has come to understand the depth of Lincoln's political ability, which is one of to be able to build consensus. He had a very disparate group of people in his cabinet and all that. Those are skills that Stanton doesn't have, um, and and so yeah, I think the story tell is both political and personal. So we find a man who is trying to deal with the loss of his friend, but also trying to salvage their political legacy and salvage what they've been trying to achieve. And those things are sort of running alongside each other. And I think that makes for, yeah, really rich kind of territory because it's, yeah, that combination of um, the political and the domestic. And I also speaks to a very different time. I mean, I was amazed by, people were able to turn up at the White House and talk to Lincoln. It was a very different, smaller, it was, and one of the things I like about the show is I feel like it delivers on some of that. That it's a young country that is working it out, and really is about the people who are in the room, um, and I think it feels like it was very important that Stanton was that person in that moment who was there to try and steady the ship and keep it together.
What I was about to ask was whether you see parallels in today's politics, whether in the UK or in the US. But there's obviously, as you said, an intimacy that exists here, which we definitely do not have now with Secret Service and armed stuff and all that, right?
Yeah, it's obviously become inherently more professionalized, and it's hard not to, looking back at those times, it's hard not to feel the distance between our politicians and the electorate now. Um, it's a much bigger business. There's a lot more money in it. Um, so the real kind of representative nature of the democracy feels a lot more stretched now. And I think that's true to the UK as it is to the US. But I think, there are obviously discontinuities, but I would say that one of why it's interesting, maybe an interesting story to tell at this moment is that it is looking at a moment in the US's history when the structures and the democracy came under huge strain, and one doesn't want to fall into sort of hyperbole, but there's definitely your country is going through a period at the moment where some of the givens are being questioned, and you've got a big election coming up in November, and a candidate who is a little more cavalier with some of these structures and institutions, and that does put strain on the whole thing. And I feel like one of the things that Monica wants to communicate through the show is a sort of hymn to the defense of democracy, how important that is.
And you're no stranger to playing a famous political figure, but I assume there's a difference in people who have been dead for over a century and those who are, alive at least during the filming and original showing of episodes. Did this feel different, portraying a real person, but not somebody who people can access in the same way?
Yeah, I mean, it just there's a lot less oversight. I have a lot more freedom because the people don't know what Stanton sounded like or how he moved, which obviously was the case when I was playing Philip in The Crown. So yeah, I have a lot more license, and that's that's quite useful.
Well, another thing about The Crown is that all the episodes came out at once, and with Manhunt, that's not the case, and we're getting to sort of stretch out a little. It's not a very long series, so it's not a huge wait. But for those who like you and are watching this interview and haven't seen Manhunt yet, do you recommend 7 episodes in a day, or better to sort of split it up a little bit?
Oh, good question. I think there are many ways to heaven. I think however you like to cut it. If you want to go full in, I think there can be benefits to that because there are lots of sort of harmonics through the show which you maybe are harder to keep in your head if it's more spread out. But I also think it responds to being given a bit of time to breathe as well. Yeah, there's a lot. It's a very complex story, and also there's lots to read up on. I think hopefully it will take people to their books and their dare I say Wikipedia to sort of to learn about it themselves.
That may be the biggest similarity between this and The Crown, I think, is that like The Crown, you sort of have to go on Wikipedia after, be like, what is this? What is, what did they add? But on the note of individual episodes, I don't know if you remember from our last conversation, we talked about your season 4 submission for the Emmys for The Crown, and then we talked about Moonshot, the season 3 submission, and you were like, if people can look at season 3 and use that episode, that'll be great. And then you won the Emmy for season 4, which was really exciting. And
Maybe listen to me.
for the limited series categories, lead actors don't submit an episode. But if you had to pick one of these 7 hours, is there one that you think best showcases either your work or just Stanton as a character?
Is that how it works? It's interesting. I didn't know that. No, I don't think I can choose one of my kids. It's like choosing having a favorite child. No, I think. I mean, what I quite like about it is there does feel like a real journey for Stanton through it. He does feel like a pretty different man at the end than he is at the beginning. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe I, if I, my advice to them this time is watch it all, and maybe that'll do it.
That's fair. Well, on the note of The Crown, I mean, that was a huge Emmy domination. I know you weren't actually at the ceremony, but every single one of your co-stars, well, not everybody because they were nominated against each other, but a lot of your
But
co-stars won. Have you kept up with the show since then with season 5 and 6? Are you a regular
yeah,
watcher?
I have. I haven't seen the most recent one, but five I saw, and yeah, I mean, I have deep fondness for that show, and obviously there's lots of producers and people working on the show who I know, and so yeah, it does feel like family. And I think yeah, it's nice to see them doing so well.
We'd also discussed your sort of demotion from season 3 to 4 in terms of, Philip's prominence on the show. And I think that's been even truer with the later seasons. What have you noticed about Jonathan Pryce's performance, and what has it been like to watch him tackle the character?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's such a strange thing to kind of hand a character on like that to someone else. What I like about it is each person sort of draws out different aspects of the same person, and so yeah, I think as a triptych, it really works. Matt, myself, and Jonathan, and hopefully results in a kind of yeah. Cumulatively, I think it adds a lot of dimension to the show. Yeah.
And I also saw you in film, You Hurt My Feelings, where I was very surprised to see you in, modern day comfortable clothing, because I feel like everything I see you in, Outlander, all this stuff, you're always in this period setting. For
Yeah.
your, whatever's to come next, do you want to spend more time in the present, or do you have any desire to continue staying in the past?
I'm, to be honest, I'm pretty phlegmatic about that. It's mainly just how interesting is the story and the character and the sort of complexity of that stuff. I try to sort of make that the thing that decides. Yeah, I don't mind if it's like in schleppy jeans in Upper East Side, New York, or in a top hat in the uh, in 1864.
Well, before I let you go, this is Awards Buzz. We like talking about awards. I think last time you said you don't watch a lot of other TV and you're sort of needed to catch up. But is there anyone else from another show or a series in general that you think is particularly awards worthy at the moment?
Oh, good question. Um, what have I seen? What have I seen? I see that's good. I'm gonna have to come back to you. I can't. I'm sort of like drawing a blank. I'm sure I have seen. Can I send you a name through the channels?
Sounds perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Tobias. It was a pleasure to see you again.
Great to see you. Take care.